The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Adrian, I don't know if you saw it, but Kobe24, who I can only assume is the actual Kobe Bryant, in the Hoop Ball forum said that I have the nicest podcast voice, and he could just listen to it all day. That was heartwarming, and it's also good to know because I've literally been podcasting all day. This is Fantasy NBA Today. Dan Besbris, Adrian Benjamins. You ready to put this thing on your shoulders, my good man? Oh, by the way, happy 14th birthday. I'm just going low.
I'm ready. Let's do this. And Kobe is absolutely correct, Dan. You've got the best voice in the game. We all strive to be on your level. So
yeah, baloney. I was joking with Adrian before we came on air that my voice is so tired. I did the Wednesday podcast this morning because, by the way, we're recording late Wednesday night for the Thursday show. Recorded for about an hour and 30 or 40 minutes with the lords of the In This League podcast crew. That's a show, by the way, that's coming out on Friday. You guys should listen to that. It's me, Lord Bogman, Lord Welsh, and Jonas Nader of Roto World, just going through a whole bunch of draft prep stuff. It was a ton of fun just to get on there and talk shop. But when the ITL guys are back into the hoops world, because they do every sport, so they're a good barometer of when people are actually tuning back into basketball, and the answer to that question is basically now. So again, you can check that out tomorrow. By the way, you can follow the two of us on Twitter at Adrian Benjamins and at Dan Besbris. It is Thursday. It's Fantasy NBA Today. Adrian, you're back from a battle with a virus. How's the family?
The family is doing better. Both of my kids were sick, so it was all hands on deck. My daughter, no. Fever, runny nose. My son had a cough. And when they are sick, man, they are extra cranky. They require extra attention. And I could tell my wife was just going nuts. She needed me. So I missed Tuesday's show, but luckily Neil was able to fill in. And I'm back. I'm feeling better. So let's do this.
So what do you think? What should Neil change his Twitter handle to?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not too creative on the Twitter handles. Let's see what the listeners come up with.
I know.
Way
come on.
More creative
Step up, listeners. It's just the ITL guys coming up with funny things for me. I need listeners to chime in. I mean, so far, the thing that we can, I think, all agree on with Neil is that he's a really easygoing dude. So you could go with Easy Neil. I still think Orange Ball Neil is pretty funny. I don't know. At Neil Rochelani would be fine too if he wanted to just go with his name. That's what you and I did. Works okay.
Got a great name. Why
That's
not?
Right. Why not? So we're talking about Dynasty stuff today, but before we get into that, we got to do a little draft guide promo. $13.99, ladies and germs. The Hoop Ball 2018 Fantasy Basketball Draft Guide for sale. Hoop-ball.com, at Hoopball Tweets, at Hoopball Fantasy. You can find the link to it at any one of those locations. $17.99 is the full price, so it's on sale $4 off right now. There might, by the way, be a coupon code in that episode of In This League. If you decide you want to listen on Friday, check it out. Get a couple more bucks off that Hoopball Draft Guide. It's awesome. You guys know how much I love the ADP stuff, the write-ups on all the players, positional breakdowns. They're going to have Dynasty stuff loaded in. Our buddy Zach Feldman has been working on some analytics pieces. It is deep. And if I'm not mistaken, they actually had some DFS stuff that got dropped in there recently as well. Although, I have to admit, Adrian, I am not particularly well-versed in the daily fantasy world. Do you dabble in that at all?
I am going to get deeper into DFS. So about 3 years ago, I got really into DFS, and I was doing all right, Dan. I was, would come up and then come back down, come back up, come back down, but was having a lot of fun and didn't lose money. And then for whatever reason, the last 2 years, I've been in a DFS slump. I've just lost. And I don't know what happened, but this year I'm ready to give it another go. And so, yeah, man, I'm excited to get into DFS. I'm excited to dive into this draft guide. Preseason, I think, starts the 28th It's coming up, Dan.
Holy smokes. The countdown. Well, Adrian, we didn't get to do our Tuesday countdown this week. You and I normally do a Tuesday show together, which then we can just announce how many weeks it is until the NBA season starts. But, dialing it back now, I guess we can say, just applying the two words less than to the countdown. Have you done it lately? Have you done the countdown? Does it get you as excited as it does me? It's so close.
I have not done it yet. Where are we right now?
We are 6 weeks.
Ooh.
Less than 6 weeks from NBA opening day. NBA opening day is October 16th this year. It's super early. They keep extending the season, so opening day just gets earlier and earlier. If you go back to Tuesday of this week, you've got the 11th, the 18th, the 25th of September, the 2nd, the 9th, and then the 16th of October. Less than 6 weeks. I think, in fact, let me see here. Quick math. 40 days, right? Am I getting that right? 40 days from today?
Yep. This is my favorite time of year. It's just the possibilities, the debates, already I'm getting some great debates on Twitter with some of the listeners on, hey, I would take this guy over this guy. I just love this time of year. It's just, it's just the possibilities are endless.
I saw that. What were you guys talking about?
Friend of the show, VP, was talking about fourth round being too early for Miles Turner. He'd much rather have a guy like Eric Bledsoe. And I can't argue that. Eric Bledsoe looked really good at the end of last season. Eric Bledsoe, I think, is going to be a solid pick this year. Fourth round sounds about right for him. But one of the things he did say was that he's so off Miles Turner that even if he was set at point guard, he would still go Eric Bledsoe. And I think that's a mistake, Dan. One of the things that I've been learning from the mock drafts and that Neil and I will get into on Friday's show when we finish the mock draft analysis is that centers, those are the scarcest position. We've said it so many times. And at a certain point, the good centers are gone, where the mid and even the later rounds, there's still some decent point guards that you can get there. So for me, I really want to lock up those centers in the early round.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I tend to gravitate towards best player available in most scenarios. I think listeners of the podcast know that's generally what I preach. But when it comes right down to it, the centers you can get early in a draft are so incredible in their ability to contribute in different categories without hurting you in other ones. And this is something, by the way, that comes up on that ITL pod as well, but it's a point that I think we've been making independently of it. And that is, as you get into those mid-round centers, Adrian, I think you and I agree on this, you're either taking a shot on a young guy who doesn't have the portfolio where, it just might not work, or you end up with a center who has deficiencies, right? Like Clint Capella is a great center candidate. He's a third-round draft pick generally, but he has a massive hole in his game. He's going to tank your free throw percentage. Al Horford is an awesome center. He's more the fourth-round type, but he does good stuff across the board, but really nothing great anymore. I like Al Horford. I think he's a nice, solid contributor, but he doesn't help you that much in a ton of categories. Nick Vucevic, he has issues with free throw percentage and turnovers and injury stuff. And then the young guys, obviously we talked, John Collins is getting hype through the roof. If I was going to take one of these mid-round centers, I would almost consider waiting a little longer and take a guy like a Paul Millsap or a Steven Adams or an Enes Kanter or a Hassan Whiteside. Those guys are falling right now. And I'll admit, outside of Whiteside, who we've seen the baggage, I'm not positive why the other guys have taken such a dip. I feel like maybe people just sort of forgot about Kanter, or Adams with the free throws stuff has burned people last year, or Millsap with the injury. I don't know, man. I think it all circles back to your point. I almost lost the thread there for a second. The centers early, the Jokic, the Towns, the Anthony Davises, these centers are so incredible because they're just good at everything. They don't hurt you. It's so rare to find a guy that can get blocks that doesn't stink in some other category.
Yeah, it's just the thinnest position in fantasy. Blocks the toughest stats. After a certain round, blocks are gone. One thing I like to do at the very end, and this is just kind of more of a dart throw. 2 rookies, Mitchell Robinson of the Knicks and Mo Bamba. These are 2 guys I like to take a shot at the very end of my draft. Now, both guys they're not projected to play a lot of minutes, but their block rate is so high that in like 15 minutes, they could give you 2 blocks easily. So if you're like hunting, if you really missed out on blocks in your draft and you coming down to the end of your draft, love taking a shot on those 2 guys. But I'm telling you, Dan, it's real slim pickings after about the 6th rounds. It's really tough. So you really got to lock up those centers and blocks at the beginning of your draft.
I lost track of how we got to this. I think it was a discussion you were having on Twitter, huh?
No, but the whole point of that is that I love this time of year, man. It's just like
there we go.
The guys you love, the sky's the limit for them right now, right? It's like it's like a gift box. It could be anything in there.
It could even be a boat.
That potential is so fun, man. And I just love this time of year, Dan.
I think I might start calling myself like the fantasy CPA, because the more that I talk about this stuff, the more I realize that I always gravitate to like the really safe investment. I am the certificate of deposit of this work. You're like out there looking at all these really fun, interesting players, and I'm sitting back here going, yeah, but Trevor Ariza's ADP is 130.
Look, this is my thinking. There's nothing wrong with that. Being safe, it's really smart. But here's the thing, Dan. I love the guy that can be way more. For example, we talk about Miles Turner. Going in the 4th, 5th round, this guy could possibly return 2nd round value. Like, I would rather take him in the 4th or 5th round than a guy who is going to finish 4th, 5th round, right? Last year, Victor Oladipo paid off huge for me. I took him in the 4th round. He returned 1st round value. Like, I love trying to hit on those guys. And for me, one of those, when I really try to buy into that, he's a young guy with his trajectory going upward, right? Like, you feel like, man, this guy, you just feel like he's not near his ceiling yet. And I love taking a shot on those guys because they could be league-winning moves.
Yeah, Oladipo.
When you hit on a guy like that.
Absolutely. Oladipo is such a perfect confluence, too, of a guy who we had seen had the ability to put up big-time fantasy numbers, still had room for growth, and was coming off a down season. So it was like depressed value, massive ceiling, and some portfolio. You rarely can find the trifecta like that of somebody who has room for growth. And frankly, that might be a good idea for a podcast later on. See if we can find the next holy grail. Who fits the bill? Who is coming off a down season, maybe injuries, maybe bad scenario, still relatively young, like Oladipo was. So, there's room for improvement, and has a portfolio where we've seen them actually perform. Because Oladipo had been like top 35 kind of guy in Orlando with Scott Skiles dicking with his minutes. So there was this world where you're like, if he does more than that, he could be, I think we all thought maybe best case scenario was like top 25, and then he even exceeded that, which was pretty sweet. There are guys like that float around out there, guys that come off of bad seasons, guys that have done it in the past a little bit, and guys that could get better. And that's the way to really find your golden goose. I happen to believe, Adrian, and then we're going to get into the dynasty stuff here, that if you can even hit on sort of 2 out of those 3 factors, maybe a guy coming off a down season who's done it before, or a young guy with unlimited potential that's coming off a down season, or a young guy with unlimited potential who's actually done it a tiny bit before. If you can get 2 out of those 3, you're probably finding a pretty good value, and 3 out of 3, well, you've got Victor Oladipo. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. That'll be topics for future podcasts, and obviously the kind of things you can probably find in the Hoop Ball Draft Guide. Go buy it for $13.99 right now. Adrian, let's talk Dynasty stuff. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Beautiful. Hoopball Dynasty League number 2. Adrian, the commissioner, is schooling us here on Fantasy NBA today and how this Dynasty League stuff works. We are on round 4 of the Dynasty Draft recap, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on each pick in this because I wanted to get into some of the strategic decisions, because now that teams have started to, after the first 3 rounds, Adrian, I think we've seen teams have sort of showed their hand a little bit, right? You can tell who's going for it, who's not. Adrian's team, by the way, not going for it.
No.
Adrian has 3 or 4. You have 4 players on your team at this point at the end of 3 rounds who are, I think, a combined 60 years old.
Yes, pretty clear at this point. I'm going super young. Luka Doncic, Jaren Jackson Jr., Mo Bamba, all teenagers. So, I mean, Dan, not only am I going young, I'm going like ultra young. And so, so my thinking here at this point is you're kind of at a disadvantage when you're going this route, right? Because these guys are really unproven. When you're drafting a Kevin Durant, a Giannis, you really know what you're getting, right? They've got a proven track record in the NBA. They've got a solid role on their team. You know what you're getting. These guys, even though you feel like they're top prospects, there's no guarantees here, right? So what I did, Dan, it's a small group of guys to choose from here, right? I'm really limiting my player pool by going this route. So what I did is I put my list of guys in tiers. My number 1 tier are guys that are like very good chance they're going to pan out, right? I feel there's a high probability they're going to pan out. Tier 2 are guys that likely to pan out. Tier 3 is 50-50, right? It's like a dart throw. And then tier 4 is probably not going to pan out, but hey, let's just see what happens, right? So anyways, my thinking here in round 4 was my last chance to get some tier 1 prospects in the age range.
All right.
So what I wanted to do here was I wanted to trade to get an extra pick in this round.
Okay. So we're going to find out. That's our tease, by the way, for slightly later in the show, because your pick is the guy you ended up in round 4 is actually towards the end of the round, right?
Yes, I believe my pick was either 19 or 20, but what happened was I made a trade for the pick right next to me, so I had 2 consecutive picks.
Okay.
In this round, yes.
Okay, round 4 opens up. Pick number 73 overall. This is a 24-team league. Chris Dunn at 73. That feels like a pretty good pick to me. Young guy, still with room for growth. Getting him, this might be later than he goes in some redraft leagues.
You nailed it, Dan. Young guy. I was off Chris Dunn. Kind of reminded me of a Rajon Rondo type. Or I really steer away from point guards that aren't very efficient. But man, this guy looked really good last season. Really won me over. Now, age 24, you feel like maybe we haven't seen his ceiling yet at all. So I feel like this is a great pick right here.
Well, I actually think that one's a pretty easy one. All right, next one. Blake Griffin at 74. I hate Blake Griffin. So tell me why I shouldn't hate this pick. And with all respect, of course, to the Chicago Yard Goats, he seems like a guy whose career is already starting to slope down.
I'm with you, Dan, but I'm going to be contrarian here, and I'm going to say, I don't know. He's the focal point of that Detroit Pistons team. They really invested in him. He's going to be the alpha guy there. Is a very nice player offensively. Has shown improvement. He's improved his outside shot. I want to say, although I still don't feel like he's great from the line, but from his first year, he has improved somewhat there.
True.
I like you, though, not a guy I really target ever. I don't think I've ever had Blake Griffin. I never really looked to draft him. The injury concern is always hurt, always. And then also, too, you just kind of feel like his trajectory has kind of already reached his peak, and he may kind of start going on that downward trend. And, not a guy I'm really high on. And you definitely want to be in win now mode if you're drafting him in a league like this.
Yeah, and looking back, this is a team that has Markelle Fultz and Devin Booker so far. So kind of an odd mishmash, maybe an opportunity to try to spin Blake Griffin for another pick down the line, and it actually segues nicely into the next one, which is Marc Gasol, who I would argue has a better fantasy game right now than Blake Griffin, but another guy that you better be making a go for it. This one does line up a little bit, by the way, because the team that drafted Marc Gasol, Pippen ain't easy, has Boogie Cousins, has Chris Middleton, and I believe the first-round pick was Kyrie Irving. So it fits a little bit more, at least in terms of team makeup. This makes a little more sense to me, even if, again, I might feel like Marc Gasol is getting closer to the end of his career than the beginning.
Yeah, definitely fits his build of win now mode. And I like you, man, it just at age 33, I mean, how many more years are you going to get a Marc Gasol? Maybe 2 at best. So I definitely wouldn't have gone this route. Even in a win now mode, I likely would have probably went another direction here. But definitely for this upcoming season, Marc Gasol is going to be a solid option for you.
Well,
so,
I'm jumping a couple picks ahead, actually, leaping over a couple of guys that are a little bit younger. Kyle Lowry actually went at 78 in this league. So is that someone maybe you would have taken over Marc Gasol?
Well, he seemed to be pretty good with his guards here. He had Kyrie Irving. Who did he take in round 2 again? Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
So
I like that one.
I don't know. I mean, I do like Kyle Lowry. If you're winning now, is going to be a top point guard option this year. But Kyle Lowry also 32 years old. So you could go for a guy like Jeff Teague, maybe, who's 30, who went later. Ricky Rubio's only 27, who went later. Now, for redraft leagues, I got Kyle Lowry ranked higher than those guys. So, like I said, if Pippen ain't easy, if his focus is to win this year, this season, Kyle Lowry would have been a great option there too.
Pick 76, 77, and 80. We're going to jump over 79 as well in that one. Are Yusuf Nurkic, DeJounte Murray, and Dario Saric, which I think we can sort of affectionately call young, younger, and youngest. None of them is a rookie. All of them are on the younger sides of their career. Even Yusuf Nurkic, who feels like has been around for a little bit. It really hasn't been that long for him. What do you think about some of these young guys going in the 75 to 80 range?
Yeah, I think these are all great picks. Yusuf Nurkic, I was really surprised to find that Nurkic's only 24 years old.
Yeah, feels like a long time, right?
I thought he was older than that. I just pictured him, he just feels like a guy who's maybe in his later 20s. So was really surprised to hear that. Now, was somewhat of a letdown last year because, we had really high hopes for him when he got traded from Denver to Portland. We knew he was going to get that starting main role as the center with the Blazers. So it was kind of a letdown, was really inconsistent, but this guy can still get better. So I felt like this was a solid pick. Dario Saric, only 24. I really like this guy. I'm a little puzzled by, exactly what his role and what his usage is going to be on the Sixers. They're so loaded. So that does worry me a little bit, but hey, this guy's just hitting the beginning of his prime right now. So I think that's a great pick. And then I really like these picks, Dan. I think they're all great right here.
Looking, I've been bouncing around a tiny bit in this thing just to sort of cluster guys as well as I can. The Chicago Yard Goats took Mitchell Robinson at 79. I have a feeling you're pretty bullish on this one.
Oh, Dan, this one was heartbreaker. And, Dan, one thing I learned is that it is really difficult to figure out where these guys are going to go. Dan, I thought maybe I can get this guy in round 6. I gave up my round 5 pick to make the trade, but I thought maybe this guy could still be available in round 6. Now, I got no problem with him going here. I think it was a smart pick. I really love Mitchell Robinson's potential. Kind of reminds me of like a Clint Capella type elite. He's the potential. This kid can lead the league in blocks one day. I believe he broke the summer league record for blocks.
Yeah, but he's going to have to pass your other guy.
Yeah, and I felt this was a really good pick. A heartbreaker for me because this guy was a guy I was targeting in that age group that I'm building around. He's only 20 years old, so I felt this was a really great pick. When he went off the board, there was a lot of groans and a lot of mumbles in the chat that we were all a little jealous that he went off the board right there.
Well, a couple of fairly young guys at 81 and 82, De'Aaron Fox and Jordan Bell. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in this range, those kind of feel like pretty reasonable picks. Guys where there's an expectation that maybe this year, next year, something like that, they start to show a little bit of improvement. This is a decent upside with a little bit of floor, a little bit less risk in these guys.
This is perfect picks right here, Dan. And these are the exact guys you want to target right here. Both these guys can help you right now. And both these guys are young you feel like their potential is still way ahead of them, right? So these are great picks right here. I'm high on both of these guys for this upcoming season. Now, there is a little bit of concern with both guys. De'Aaron Fox, we'd love to see improvement with his efficiency. Jordan Bell, the Warriors are so crowded, but I really like these guys, not only in this dynasty format, but in redraft leagues as well.
Yeah. Jonas Valanciunas at 83, Hassan Whiteside at 84. Well, I mean, tell me, what do you, I got nothing here. Whiteside's a guy that I don't know. I have no idea what his career trajectory looks like right now. He looks like he's kind of on the outs with the Heat. They are, by the way, a better team with him on the floor. Most people don't want to give him credit, but his defense does help them. Jonas Valanciunas became more of kind of a per 36 sort of guy last year. They dialed him back on the minutes, but his game actually stayed fantasy relevant. And neither one of these guys is as old as they seem, so what does that mean?
So both these guys, to me, there's a little question marks with these guys. Jonas Valanciunas, still only 26 years old. Yeah. So, we feel like he still could have some potential. I'm really excited about the coach change in Toronto. I felt like Coach Casey may have held him back a little bit. There were times where his minutes were all over the place, or you just felt like he wasn't getting the proper minutes that he deserved. So I'm really curious to see how things look this season. So I like this pick right here. Whiteside, I'm a little more off only because, 30 years old or 29 years old. And, you feel like he may have an issue with his attitude. Has kind of been on the outs, as you mentioned, with the Miami Heat. Also, to, the whole evolution of the big man going a little more, being able to shoot outside and stuff. You kind of wonder if the game's passing him by a little bit. But now, Dan, we talked earlier in the show about the scarcity on the blocks. This guy's elite. It could be elite in that category. So, I'm hearing some good things about him in the offseason. I'm hearing last year part of the reason why his numbers were down is because he never got healthy. So let's see if he can kind of right the ship for this season. Yeah,
I think in a redraft league, I think that's an okay risk to take. In a dynasty league, you just worry that he could be out of the NBA in 2 seasons if things could sort of break the wrong way. I should have, by the way, thrown Jeff Teague into this mix too, as someone who's been around for a little bit. He was at 86. So there is one pick in between Whiteside and Teague. You have similar feelings on Teague in this range as just sort of like a fairly trustworthy dude that is only going to give you a few more years, but not a bad pick necessarily?
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Teague, definitely going to help you win now. I probably would have looked at, Ricky Rubio just went a little bit later, is 3 years younger. But, you're trying to win right now. Jeff Teague, very solid, seems very safe. We know he's going to get a lot of minutes in that Minnesota offense. And Team Hank Aaron definitely going for the win right now.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. You guys have already heard my take. If I was in a dynasty league, I'd be going win now that first year, and then I just crash and burn for a decade. The reason I brought up Jeff Teague is because now, outside of Andrew Wiggins at 88, it is Rookie City coming up here. You got Michael Porter Jr. at 85, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 87, Kevin Knox at 89, Colin Sexton at 90, Harry Giles at 92. A lot of rooks go in that chunk.
Yeah, a lot of risk right here, man. Michael Porter Jr., I'm very scared of. Has a back issue and already needed a second surgery right after the draft on his back. Gonna likely miss the entire year. This is real risky right here because you could still get a real solid young guy here if this team was going young here. So very, very risky there. Andrew Wiggins, a guy we've been a little disappointed because we thought he would be a lot more.
Yeah, he's
we
a dookie.
haven't seen that evolution yet from him, but also too, Dan, still pretty young at age 23. So a decent pick right here. And then real young Kevin Knox, Colin Sexton, Harry Giles. I mean, these are all real young guys, but I like what I'm hearing. They have so much potential. So let's see.
Well, I'm all out on Andrew Wiggins. That's a dookie. That's a dookie fantasy player right there. That's okay.
I got something I got to say here. And so the way we feel about Andrew Wiggins, Dan, there was a time we felt this way about another player named DeMar DeRozan. There was a time where DeMar DeRozan was very similar to Andrew Wiggins, an empty scorer, didn't do a lot else. He was a guy we drafted in the later rounds. DeMar DeRozan improved his game, started contributing, and started helping in other categories, became a decent, a pretty solid fantasy asset. And I feel like this can still happen with Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, there's one category where one guy is a big positive and the other is a massive negative, and I don't think that's ever going to change, and that's free throws.
Yeah, and I don't for sure. I think the idea of Andrew Wiggins being that elite superstar, all-star player when he first came to the league, I feel like that dream is dying. But I still believe that Andrew Wiggins can become a DeMar DeRozan type that will eventually, finish in that like 30 range.
Listen, I got to put my CPA hat on here. Adrian, the dream is dead. The dream is dead.
He's still young, Dan. He's still young.
I know. It's just not happening. He is who he is at this point. And the free throws, if he doesn't get those free throws up into the high 70s and maybe even 80, there's no way to get over the hump. Can't do it. Ricky Rubio is a non-rookie who was taken at 91. Jabari Parker, a non-rookie at 93. Bogdanovich, sophomore campaign. He's at 94. Will Barton. And then Dan's favorite, Dwight Howard at 96. That schmeckle. So this person's going to have to punt free throws forever in Dynasty. That's a pretty rough spot to be in.
Yes, but the good news, Dan, is Dwight Howard wants to play till he's 40 years old.
Outstanding. So you only have to punt free throws until 2026.
Look, Dwight Howard, man, I don't know what to say about this guy. Just not a guy. I've avoided him for so long because of the free throw shooting, but I do have to admit, played a lot better than I thought he would last year. I feel like he kind of knows his role now, and I'm kind of curious to see how he's going to fit in with the Wizards if he just kind of stays in his lane and does what he's good at. I think he can, be an okay asset. I wouldn't take him in this Dynasty League here. I'm trying to look at some centers that went after him. Dan, in the next round, not to get ahead and give things away, Enes Kanter, Paul Millsap went later. I mean,
Brooke Lopez.
I would much rather have these guys over him. But also, too, we've talked about this. Again, we've talked about the scarcity on blocks. Dwight Howard should be elite in that category. Maybe Rubberneck Lions was just kind of really hunting hard on that category.
Dude, they are hunting real hard. You want to hear the other picks for Rubberneck? I got it in front of me here.
Sure, yeah.
Clint Capella, Miles Turner, and Dennis Smith Jr. So they are in full. Wow. That's full punt mode, by the way, and they also are collecting blocks like they're going out of style.
Yeah, and at that point, he figures he's going to be bad at free throw. Might as well grab a guy like Dwight Howard. The age worries me, but 32 years old is kind of scary, but he, from all that we hear, is he's in really good shape. He takes care of himself, and he said he wants to play a long time. So, but yeah, definitely would have went another direction there.
Fan-freaking-tastic. Can't wait. Can't wait to see Dwight aging gracefully as 39-year-old Dwight lumbers down the floor for his 14th NBA franchise, crushing the locker room spirit of the... Let's see, where will he be in 2025? Dwight Howard will be on the Milwaukee Bucks. You heard it here first. 2025. Put a pin in that one. Okay, so what about the other, not older guys? Some of them are a little bit older. Ricky Rubio, Jabari Parker, Will Barton, and then Bogdan Bogdanovic, a little bit younger in this territory. What do you think about teams taking those guys?
I love the guys, except for Jabari Parker. I wouldn't go near Jabari Parker, but I love Ricky Rubio, a guy I used to avoid early in his career due to the injuries. But his last year in Minnesota, he really won me over. And a guy I don't mind targeting in redraft leagues. I feel like it was a pretty good pick here. Bog, really interesting pick. The Kings are such an interesting team. He's only 26 years old. Really like what I saw from him in his rookie year. So I feel like the best is still in front of him. Will Barton, solid pick. Secret's out on this guy, Dan. We're not going to get any kind of discount on him this year in redraft leagues. Only 27 years old, solid contributor. I felt like this was a great pick here at overall pick 95. I felt that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's Hoopball Pro Zach Feldman, by the way, who had the third overall pick in this fantasy Dynasty League. He's got Cat, Chris Paul, Al Horford, and Will Barton. So a pretty strong win now / win soon kind of team. And obviously, if you got one of those top 4 or 5 picks in a Dynasty League, you have such a massive edge going forward because you can get a guy who's got a decade of top tier talent under your belt. I mean, just what a nice fail-safe to have. Okay, so Adrian, you did a nice job, by the way, of dancing around the fact that you pulled off a trade in this neighborhood, and it involved the 17th, 19th, and 20th picks in this 4th round. Overall, I believe that would be 89, 91, and 92. Want to tell us what that was?
Yeah, so I had either the 19th or the 20th pick in this draft. I mentioned before, this was my last round to grab these elite tier, super young prospects. So I really wanted to get another pick in this round. Dan, I put together like this email about, hey, do you want to trade with me? I'll give you my pick in the 5th round. I'll also give you a 2nd round draft pick in next year. And I'll let you move up in another round. We can swap picks. So I had this thing. I sent it out to all the teams. Like, I think I sent it out to 8 or 9 teams, just copying and pasting this email. Oh yeah, it's crazy. And then what's funny, Dan, is you get responses, and then you get people who are kind of like negotiating with you. You may have 3 or 4 negotiations going on at once. It's crazy. It's so fun, man. But anyways, my thinking was I really need to get 2 more guys in that top tier. I was targeting 3 guys specifically.
Wait, now when you say top tier, what do you mean? Top tier of rookies?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, I put my young prospects a list in tiers. Tier 1, very good chance of panning out, right? Because as I said earlier in the show, when you're really targeting these young prospects, you really don't know. There's no guarantee that these guys are going to pan out. As I mentioned before, when you're drafting Kevin Durant, Giannis, you're pretty much guaranteed what you're going to get, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what their track record is in the league. You know what they've done before. You know what their outlook is, what their role is. These young rookie prospects who haven't even played yet, Dan, we don't know. There's no guarantees here. So I put them in tiers. And the number 1 tier is guys who I feel are very, very likely to pan out. So I had 3 guys still in this tier. It was my last chance to grab multiple guys in this tier. My targets were Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, really like him, Kevin Knox, Colin Sexton. My plan, Dan, was to get 2 of those guys, 2 of those 3. Didn't even care which 2, just wanted 2 of those 3. Now, as I was able to make the trade, I had 2 picks, pick 19, pick 20. And the guys I want went literally, Dan, right before me. Pick 15 in this round, Shea Gills goes off. Pick 17, which is 2 picks before I'm about to go, Kevin Knox goes off the board. Pick 18, the pick right before me, Colin Sexton goes off the board, Dan. The whole reason why I went through all the trouble to make the trade to get 2 of these 2 guys, and the dream is dead right there, man.
Okay, so what did you do about it?
Luckily, I'm still in conversation with Team Bigfoot. He kind of knows, like, hey, one of your targets here was Kevin Knox, right? I'm like, yes, absolutely. Well, hey,
there goes your leverage.
Hey, I'll give you Kevin Knox, but you got to give me your 2 picks here. So, I figured, I'll be honest with you, Dan, I didn't even, as I said, after those guys went off the board, all the guys I'm looking at, they're in the next tier down. And there's a big drop off to me in value from the top tier to the second tier. So it was worth it for me to deal these 2 picks back to back for me to get Kevin Knox right here.
So did this trade take place in between the Kevin Knox pick and your upcoming 2 picks? Did it all shake out in like a 20-minute window?
No, so I believe what happened is basically Kevin Knox went off the board, Colin Sexton went off the board, and then we kind of had this deal, we were talking about it, and then we decided he was cool with it, I was cool with it, we just pulled the trigger on it. So it happened while I was up. I was literally I was on the clock on this point.
Oh, damn.
And then so then I sent him the 2 picks, he sent me Kevin Knox.
So you sent him Ricky Rubio and
Harry Giles.
Ah, okay. And you got Kevin Knox back. And see, this actually plays into one of the questions I asked earlier on, which is there anything to sort of having a veteran on your team to use as trade bait? Not that you made this pick, you didn't, but you offered the sort of the promise of if they wanted a veteran, if they wanted a young guy. What's a pick worth in this case? It's 2 slots later, but you were able to get the guy you wanted. It seems like in Dynasty, getting the guy is actually much more important than maybe comparing that to a redraft league, where oftentimes getting the guy costs you a pick. You have to blow an earlier pick, and it hurts your team value. With Dynasty, you got to get your guy because you're believing in them for 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, for me, it was really worth it to get the guy. Now, if there were still more players in that tier that I was talking about, I likely would have just passed on the trade and taken the 2 guys I still like. But for me, there was a huge drop-off. I feel like I have now 4 prospects in that top tier that I feel is very, very likely to pan out. And, I mean, Dan, if you get 4 guys who, let's say they're going to end up being top 30 guys, I mean, that's huge in a 24-team league, right? Having 4 guys that are top 30.
So how do you add to that going forward? How would you add to a team like that, say, would it be through free agent pickups? Would it be through next year's Dynasty draft? How do you build on top of that? It seems like you need almost all of your guys to pan out.
Yeah, and that's not possible. It's just not possible for every single one of your guys to pan out. There are definitely going to be some young guys that you just miss on. It's just mathematically, that's just the way that it is. But for me, it's real difficult for me to make deals in trades, right? Because I can only trade for an ultra young prospect. And, for me to get one of those guys, I got to give up an ultra young prospect. So it's super hard for me to make trades. It's going to be through the draft. My team's not going to be very good. So I'm already looking at top prospects for 2019. Dan, if I can hit on in the next 2 years, add 2 stud rookies to this, and let's say 70% of my team ends up panning out in 4 years from now, I feel like I'm going to have a powerhouse team.
So let me ask you a fundamental question about how a 24-team Dynasty League works. You guys basically drafted the NBA. There's 360 players came off the board. So what does that mean?
can I just tell you?
Yeah.
We found out that Tyrone Wallace was about to sign with the New Orleans Pelicans. Now,
hell yeah, Cal grad, baby.
Now, it ended up that the Clippers matched the offer sheet. The Clippers are going to hang on to him. But, Dan, can I tell you, I rushed to the wire to pick up Tyrone Wallace. He was already owned in this league.
Okay,
that's how crazy this league is. Dan, we are I am doing research on possible G League players that could be eventually make it in the NBA.
That's nuts.
I am doing research on overseas stashes that could eventually make it to the NBA. That's how crazy this league is.
There's so much to know. What is a draft? What does a second-year draft in a league like this even look like? How many players can you even draft in such a format?
Oh, well, we're going to draft. It's a 2-round draft. It's 24 teams, so we're going to draft 48 guys.
There you go.
And now, this is why, Dan, when I made that trade to get that extra pick, I moved to second-round pick. And keep in mind, my team's going to probably be the worst team in this league. So my draft picks, I plan on being very high. So my second-round pick's going to be really high in that second round, right? So that could be overall pick 25, pick 26, pick 27. But I got no problem moving that to get my guy because, Dan, those picks likely are not going to be that great, especially next year. Word is that next year's 2019 draft not going to be as deep as this current draft or the last few drafts that we've seen.
Well, there's a very legitimate shot that you'll have the first overall pick next year in this this fantasy draft. Your team is, with all due respect, of course, Adrian, not going to be very good this season.
Oh man, Dan, I got my eye on a couple guys already. Guys from
don't
Duke.
give them away. No, you don't have to tip that much of your hand. You're still in this league with some other hoopball pros and hoopball listeners. But you guys heard it right here, man. Adrian is already gearing up for the 2019 NBA draft. You are, good sir, degenerate, and that's okay. So I mean, anybody takes a look at your team right now, they'll know that your pick in next year's draft is going to be a real juicy one. Would you consider moving it if you saw a rookie that was just blowing the roof off the building this year?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Now, to kind of get people away from tanking, what we do is we actually do a lottery for the bottom 12 teams. Now, This lottery is weighted, meaning the bottom 3 teams have the most lottery balls. The middle teams have mid lottery balls. And then the teams in the upper part of that range have the least amount of lottery balls. So, Dan, there's no guarantee here. What if I finish last and I end up with the 12th pick, right?
Yikes.
Like that's like a nightmare right there. So, yeah, if I could trade my number 1 pick to get a pretty solid talent, a rookie talent, I would do that, yes.
There you go. Any last thoughts on round 4 or dynasty strategy to this point before we put a pin in this until next week?
Yeah, I thought this was a really solid round right here. Just a lot of great young prospects and Dejounte Murray and De'Aaron Fox, Jordan Bell, and then a mix of some pretty good win now guys and Jeff Teague and this was a really solid round right here.
Nicely done, everybody. Hoopball Dynasty League 2 rumbles on. Next week, we will take a look at round 5. Any additional strategy questions on Dynasty? And of course, as Adrian's mentioned, the Twitter conversation is picking up these days as people start to tune back into fantasy basketball. You can hit us up at Dan Besbris and at Adrian Benjamins. If you're asking Dynasty questions, you should probably ask that guy. Anything else, feel free to send it my way. He'll probably be faster than I am because I'm a crotchety old man with a lot of things to do on a daily basis. But we'll both get back to you real quick. We are active members of the social media community. Adrian, you and Neil got a show coming up tomorrow. What are you guys breaking down?
Yes, we're going to go through the second half of our listener mock draft.
Nice.
Really excited to dive into that because the end of that was very interesting, and we learned a lot of lessons after the entire draft was over. So very excited to talk to Neil.
That's nice. That's a good presentation. Sounds like it's going to be the end of a quality sitcom. A lesson was learned, and everybody felt better at the end of it. He's Adrian Benjamins. I am Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today. I am out for a couple of days. Adrian and Neil will carry you through into the weekend. Thanks for listening, everybody. Give us a follow. Buy the draft guide. Rate and review the podcast if you have a moment as well. We'll love you forever. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.